Hey, what's going on, family? This is Andy Henriquez here. And of course, I want to welcome you back to the Thursday night Show Up for Your Life motivational live stream. Thank you so much for joining me. And listen, I got a message for you tonight. Hey, if you have ever experienced a loss, I don't know what kind of loss, but if you've ever experienced a loss, whether it's a financial loss, whether it was a relationship loss, whether it was a loss of health, if you've ever experienced a loss, listen, I've got a lesson for you tonight because there's one thing in life. We can't avoid the losses. However, we can find a way to get a lesson from it. So if you've gone through a loss before, I want to help you to look back at that loss, see if you can unpackage and pull out some lessons so that you can apply your life and take things to the next level. And so listen, as you're jumping in, all right, I see you, Shawanda, absolutely. Listen, as you're jumping in, do me a quick favor before we get started on tonight's message. Do me a quick favor, go ahead and put in your city and your state so I could go ahead and give you a quick shout out before we get started on the Thursday night Show Up for Your Life motivational live stream. And so I want to give a couple quick shout outs before we get started. And of course, like always, I got a message for you tonight. So if you know that there's some people that you would love to share this message with, this would be a great time for you to go ahead and hit the share button before we get started. And so this message is specifically for everybody who has experienced a loss. And I don't think that there's any adult out there that is exempt from experiencing loss, whether that was a financial loss, whether it was a relationship loss, whether it was a health loss. I want to help you to be able to redeem that loss. In other words, even though you've experienced that pain, maybe you've lost some money as a result of it, maybe you've lost a lot of sleep over a result of it, maybe you've even lost a very important relationship to you as a result of it, but I want to help you to pull out a lesson, get something that you can pull from that. So number one, so that you don't have to repeat whatever that is, and not only that, but so that you can get something that's going to allow you to grow, allow you to take your life to the next level. Because there's an old proverb, and here's what it says: when you lose, don't lose the lesson. And so I want to help you to unpackage some of those lessons. So first of all, let me give a quick shout out. I want to give a shout out to Moet in ATL. Give a shout out to Theon, who is in Florida. How you doing? So of course we got ATL in the house. We got Florida in the house. As you're jumping on, do me a quick favor. I want to give you a quick shout out before we get started on this evening's message. Go ahead and put in your city and your state so I could go ahead and give you a quick shout out. Once again, this message is for all of you out there who have experienced a loss, some type of loss. Listen, I know that there's a possibility that you've experienced a financial loss. Maybe you've experienced some type of a relationship loss. Maybe you have even experienced some type of a health loss. Regardless of what type of loss you've experienced, one of the things that I would definitely tell you is if you lose, then don't lose the lesson. And so my whole message for you this evening is to help you to sort of reassess some of the losses that you've experienced in life: financial losses, relationship losses, health losses, any kind of loss that you've experienced in your life. I want you to go back and look at it, evaluate it, and see if you can pull out a lesson that's going to be able to help you to take your life to the next level. So once again, let me give a quick shout out. We got ATL in the house. We got Florida in the house. We got Louisiana in the house. We got Miami Gardens down in Florida in the house. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And so, of course, I want to thank all of you for joining me on the Thursday night Show Up for Your Life motivational live stream. And so before we get started, do me a quick favor. For those of you who are tuning in right now via the live stream, go ahead and hit the share button, because I can guarantee you this, that I'm going to share something in tonight's message that's going to help you to take your life to the next level, that's going to help you to pull some great things out of the past losses and the pains that you've experienced in your life, and also hopefully put you in a position that if you can avoid it, so that you don't repeat some of the same mistakes that you've made in the past. And I can tell you this, that there's going to be some great nuggets out of tonight's message. So do me a quick favor, go ahead and hit the share button, because I want to make sure as many people as possible get an opportunity to hear tonight's message. And so once again, before I get started, I want to give a quick shout out. We got Baltimore in the house, Florida in the house, Louisiana in the house, Georgia in the house, Maryland in the house. Yes, yes, I see you guys. Thank you for sharing. Darren, thank you also. I see you. Joel, thank you so much. And so once again, I want to thank all of you for joining me on the Thursday night Show Up for Your Life motivational live stream. So we're about to dive right on in. And so once again, for those of you who are jumping in right now, tonight's message is specifically for those of you who have experienced a loss. And one of the things that I know for sure, if you are a breathing adult, you have experienced a loss. Something has happened. You've experienced a financial loss. You've experienced a relationship loss. Maybe perhaps you've experienced some loss in your health. Listen, one thing is certain. There's one thing in life that we cannot avoid, and that is experiencing losses. Now, here's the thing. When you experience those losses, you don't need to necessarily have those losses become compounded. And so you might say, well, Andy, what do you mean by that? Here's what I mean by that. Listen, if you experience a loss and you fail to take the time to go back and evaluate the loss and find the lesson with this experience, sometimes very painful experience that you've gone through, then you increase the likelihood that you're going to repeat the exact same thing over and over again. Let me help you out. Let me help you to understand what I mean by that. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. Some of you have experienced some significant losses in a relationship. In other words, you were in a relationship with somebody that you thought was going to be a relationship that was going to last a very long time. Maybe perhaps this was a relationship with an significant other, or maybe an ex-husband, an ex-wife, and so forth. And so what happens is losing that relationship has perhaps caused you a lot of pain. But here's what I want you to understand, that oftentimes when you go through a loss like that, there's normally some lessons that you need to learn. And if you fail to learn those lessons, then there is a very strong probability that you are going to make the same mistakes again. And if you don't believe me, just go ahead and look at what the rates are for people who have already gone through a divorce, right? If you go back and you look at the statistics, people who've gone through a divorce are literally over 70% more likely to go through another divorce if they get married again. And so the reason why that often happens is because there's some loss and some lessons that they failed to gain from their first marriages that they take on to the second marriage that puts them in a position where they're going to repeat it again. Listen, if maybe perhaps you're an entrepreneur and maybe perhaps you have experienced loss after loss after loss in your entrepreneur endeavors, there's a strong probability that there are some lessons that you could have learned, like maybe perhaps you should have planned better. Maybe perhaps you should have made sure you had better capital. Maybe perhaps you should have asked for help. Maybe perhaps you should have learned some things. There's some lessons that if you don't take the time to unpackage those lessons and learn those lessons, then you are so much more likely to repeat them again. And so the main thing that I want you to learn tonight, and I want you to write this down, is this. Here's what I want you to understand. This is an old proverb that's often associated and given credit to the Dalai Lama, but I'll tell you this, that this is not just from one individual. This has been around for a very long time. If you look it up on different sources on the internet, you'll see different people get a credit for it. But I tell you this, here's the main thing I need you to get, and I want you to write this down. When you lose, don't lose the lesson. Just write that down. That's a powerful, powerful proverb, and I need you to get that. When you lose, don't lose the lesson, because here's what I want you to understand. None of us are exempt from experiencing a loss. All of us are going to experience some losses. Sometimes the losses are going to be around relationships. Sometimes they're going to be around finances. Sometimes they're going to be around health. But I can tell you this, at some point or another during your life, you are going to experience a loss. But the only question is, are you going to get the lesson so that you can take that lesson and grow from it? Are you going to get the lesson so that you can take that lesson and become a better person as a result of it? Are you going to get that lesson so that you don't accidentally make the mistake of repeating the same mistake over and over and over again? And so what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and step your game up. And when you experience a loss, what I want you to do is this. I want you to find the lesson. Do me a quick favor right now in the comment section. Just do me a quick favor. Go ahead and put hashtag find the lesson. Find the lesson. And so one of the things that we need to do for those of us that are looking to be achievers, for those of us who are looking to grow in life, for those of us who are looking to get to our next level, for those of us who are sick and tired of being sick and tired, for those of us who don't want to keep repeating the same patterns in our life, the same pattern of maybe struggling financially, the same pattern of going from one toxic relationship to another, the same pattern of breaking promises, the same pattern of having success only to sabotage it, the same pattern of hitting the ceiling on your success and not being able to break through to the next level. Understand this, that oftentimes when you experience a loss, there is going to be a profound lesson in there. So I want you to go ahead and do me a quick favor. I want you to start conditioning yourself to find the lesson. And so go ahead. I see you guys. Thank you so much. Put the hashtag find the lesson. And so there is always a lesson in there when you unpackage your losses. And the reason why I share this, listen, the reason why I share this, I think back, one of my buddies shared a story with me, and it was sort of funny. He was telling me, this guy literally was a wrestler in high school. He was not just a wrestler, which is a particular sport for those of you who aren't very clear what I was talking about. But he also was a state champion. I mean, this guy was a really, really talented fighter. And so one time we were having a conversation. I asked him, I said, man, have you ever really lost a fight? And so he was telling me, man, you know what? I got to tell you this story, Andy. And so he told me this story, and he had me cracking up. And here's what he told me. He said, Andy, listen, man. He said, one time I was on the school bus, and there's another guy on the school bus. And to be honest with you, I really considered him to be one of my friends. And he said, but for some reason, you know how kids can act on the school bus, man. He said the kids on the school bus just started instigating because they wanted to see us fight. And so the kids would look over at me and they would say, hey, Eric, I bet you can't beat up James. And then they would look over at James and they say, hey, James, I bet you can't beat up Eric. And so literally they kept doing this back and forth on the bus. Now, he's like, I always considered James to be my friend. I had no interest in actually fighting this guy. But he said, man, they kept going back and forth. And then so finally it just got to the point where I was like, I'm not afraid of James. And James was like, I'm not afraid of Eric. And so I think you can see where this story is going, right? And so literally you got two guys who are friends. They're riding the school bus together. The other students on the school bus are instigating and trying to get them to fight. And so sure enough, this all comes to a climax. They happen to have the exact same bus stop. So they both get off of the school bus. They get off on the bus, and literally the kids are there instigating. Yeah, I told you he was scared. I told you that he was afraid to fight him. And so next thing you know, they both take their book bags off, and they're in a full-out fight. And so my friend said, Andy, man, I got my wrestling background. So I grabbed him. I put him in a headlock, and he said, man, I thought for sure that I was about to win the fight. And he said, man, somehow, some way, he slipped out of the headlock that I had him in, and out of nowhere, he punched me right in the mouth. And he was like, oh, and he said, Andy, man, you don't understand, man. When he punched me, all of a sudden, man, it was like I was devastated. And he said, at the same time, the moment he punched me, I started thinking for a moment, why in the world are we even fighting in the first place? And he said, Andy, man, as crazy as this sounds, he says, I literally, in the middle of us fighting, I told him, time out, time out, time out. I said, wait a second. You said time out in the middle of a fight? He said, yes, man. I told him, time out, time out. And he said, he looked over at the guy and he said, wait a second, man. He said, why are we fighting? And it was like the most surreal moment, because he said his buddy looked over at him and he said, I don't know. And he said that literally in that moment, it's like all of a sudden now, all the chatter of all the students stopped around them and they realized that they had no reason for fighting. And in that moment, they decided to stop, put their book bags back on, and stop fighting. Now, I share that story with you because I need you to get this. You see, my friend was just sharing a little simple story about a quote unquote fight that he considered himself to have lost that fight. But what I want you to understand is that when he looks back at that experience, there is actually a very powerful lesson there. And I want to share that lesson with you. And so here's what the lesson that my friend learned. Here's what he learned. If you're going to fight for whatever you're going to fight for in life, if you're going to fight for a business, if you're going to get in a fight for a relationship, if you're going to get in a fight for your goals and your dreams, whatever reason that you decide to get into a fight, you better have known why you are getting in the fight. Listen carefully. If you're going to fight, make sure you know why you're getting in the fight. And the reason why I say that is because there are so many people who are in the middle of a fight right now in their life. They're fighting for their dreams. They're fighting for their goals. They're fighting for their marriage, and they're ready to throw in the towel. But here's what I want you to understand. It's easy to throw in the towel when you don't know why you're fighting in the first place. It's easy to throw in the towel when you don't really know why you're fighting. But understand this. When you understand why you're fighting, when there's meaning and purpose behind what you're fighting for, when you know that the reason why you're fighting is because you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, because you know that there's a calling on your life, because you know that you could be living out your purpose, because you know that you have family and relatives and people that are counting on you, because you know that they've always told you what you couldn't do and you want to be able to prove them wrong. When you know why that you're fighting, all of a sudden you fight a little differently. When you know why that you're fighting, all of a sudden now you can stay in the arena and keep fighting. When you know why you're fighting, all of a sudden now you can make things happen. And when other people are ready to throw in the towel, you can stay in the arena and continue to put up a fight for your goals, for your dreams, and for the things that are most important to you. Now, I want you to understand this. My friend could have just looked back at that experience and just say, hey, you know what? That's just a little silly story about me getting into a fight back in high school. But what I want you to understand is a lot of times in those little life experiences, the small ones as well as the big ones, there's always a lesson. And it's your responsibility to find the lesson and to unpackage the lesson. You see, my friend Eric learned a very powerful lesson, and it's a lesson that we can all learn from. And what he learned is that if you're going to fight in life, you better know as to why you're actually fighting. So here's what I want you to do for a moment. I want you to think about an experience that you've had in your life, a loss that you've experienced, whether it's a financial, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a health loss, whatever it might be. I want you to look back at a loss that you've experienced in your life. Maybe perhaps you still haven't gotten over it. Maybe you're still bitter. Maybe you're still angry at somebody. Maybe you're still pointing the finger at somebody. Maybe you're still beating yourself up because you're saying, man, how could I have been so stupid? How could I have just been so gullible? Why did I trust that person? I want you to look back at your life at a loss that you've experienced. And I want you to take the high road. Instead of being bitter, instead of just looking back at that experience and just thinking that you were the victim, instead of feeling like somebody did you wrong, I want you to think for a moment and I want you to try to figure out what was the lesson. Remember what I told you, hashtag find the lesson. What was the lesson? What's the lesson that you needed to gain? What is the thing that you need to change? Do you need to take ownership of the situation? Is it time for you to start letting go? Did you need to ask for help? Do you need to stop being so prideful? Do you need to stop holding grudges? Do you need to stop revisiting and reliving the past? Listen, there's always a lesson there. There's a lesson that you need to unpackage. And that's why it is so profound, that proverb that says, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. There's always a lesson there. And if you don't learn the lesson, then sadly, the loss that you've experienced is oftentimes compounded. And the reason why it becomes compounded is because you put yourself in position for you to experience the exact same loss over and over and over again. Listen, there are some people whose lives literally looks like a Ferris wheel. It just goes round and round and round, and they just keep reliving the same experiences over and over again, and they still keep going through the same losses over and over and over again. And the reason why they keep experiencing the same losses, the reason why they keep reliving the same chapter in their life, the reason why they keep experiencing all the same consequences is because when they lose, they don't get the lesson. And so what I'm saying to you is this: you got to find the lesson. Make sure you find the lesson. Do me a favor right now. Do me a favor right now as you're hearing this message. Go ahead and hit the share button, because I personally know that there's somebody that you're connected to that needs to hear this message. There's somebody you're connected to that's going to be able to pull something from here that literally their life is on repeat. They keep reliving the same situations. They keep making the same old mistakes, and they're going from experience to experience, and they're not finding the lessons. And because of that, they're not growing. And because of that, their life is not going to the next level. And so hopefully they're going to get something from this message that's going to cause them to take full ownership of what's going on in their life and see if they can, in fact, find the lesson there. I can tell you this. I remember when I first left corporate America back in 2004, and I decided to step outside of my comfort zone and leave my corporate job as a CPA, as an accountant. And literally, try to go ahead and make my footprint as an entrepreneur and figure out what my purpose and what my passion was. And I'm telling you that shortly after me making the decision to leave a very stable career, a very stable job that was in alignment with what I got my degree in and everything, I literally took all of my savings and I made a significant investment in a real estate transaction overseas. And I'm telling you, unfortunately, that was a terrible investment. I literally lost all of my money. And I can tell you this, that when I lost all my money, I got to a place where for a moment, I had an outward focus and I was just blaming the person, the family member who brought this investment to me. And I was saying, man, you know what? I can't believe him. He was a liar. He was manipulative. You know, he told me he was going to do something and he didn't necessarily do it. And so for the longest, I got stuck on it just being his fault and what he did and the fact that he lied and the fact that he didn't do what he said he was going to do. And as long as I was just blaming everything on him, then guess what? There was no lesson in it for me. And so what I want you to understand is that sometimes when you experience a loss, it's easy for you to start having an outward focus and start blaming other people and other consequences and other events for your loss. And so when you continue to have an outward focus, when you're pointing the finger at what he did or what she did, or because of the fact that nobody wants you to advance, or because of the fact that this person let you down and so forth, when you have an outward focus and the problem and the loss that you've experienced is everybody else's fault except for your own, then unfortunately you miss out on learning a very powerful lesson. And so I'm telling you, for me, my breakthrough came when I stopped pointing my finger outwards and stopped blaming my family member for this bad investment. And I started to unpackage what happened and start to figure out the role that I played in the experience. And so what I realized is, number one, my family member didn't hold a gun to my head and make me have to make the investment. I could have done some more due diligence. I could have done some things to better protect myself. I was naive. There's some things that I should have known. I could have done some more research. There's plenty of things that I should have learned. And I'm telling you, for the longest, I was bitter and angry at him. And not only that, I even started to consider myself to be a failure. And then I had to go back and finally gain some wisdom to go back and look back at my situation and say, wait a second, Andy, you went through a loss, but when you lose, don't lose the lesson. What's the lesson here for you? And so what I learned is that, number one, I had to take full accountability for what was going on in my life. And so as long as I was the victim, and as long as everything that happened to me was a result of what he did, then what it meant is that I had no control and ability to be able to change it. And so what I want you to understand is that when you've gone through a loss, and as long as you're putting the focus on everybody else but yourself, then what it means is that you have relinquished all of your power. And what you're saying is that I have no ability to be able to change my circumstances because it is not my fault. It is everybody else's fault. But I tell you that sadly, there's no growth there. And so if you want to experience growth, you need to literally hold the mirror up and look at this situation and say, yes, maybe perhaps this person did some things that they should have done. Maybe perhaps this circumstance was not the way that I want it to be. However, what was my role in this, and what is it that I can do to stop this and prevent this from happening to me in the future? What is it that I can do that's going to allow me to be able to stretch and grow? And so when I went back and looked at my situation, I had to learn some very powerful lessons. I had to learn to take full accountability and responsibility for my actions. I had to also learn that just because I had experienced failure, it didn't mean that I was a failure. Somebody said that failure is an event. It's not a person. Zig Ziglar said that failure is an event. It's not a person. Just because you've failed at something, just because you had a big failure doesn't mean that you're a failure. That event might have been a failure, but it doesn't mean that you're a failure. And so you've got to learn to embrace that and stop labeling yourself as a failure and using that as an excuse to not move forward. And then the other thing, the very powerful lesson that I learned is that oftentimes that failure is going to precede success. And so I had to learn that as long as I was willing to get the lessons from that experience, that those lessons were going to set me up to be able to experience success later on. And sure enough, even though that was a very terrible real estate experience, the lessons that I learned from that experience allowed me to have many other successful real estate transactions. And so what I want you to understand is this: just how I had to go back and look at this situation, that at first I had an outward focus and I was blaming somebody else. When I went back and evaluated the role that I played and tried to figure out what the lesson was, I had a serious major breakthrough. And I'm hoping that you can do the same. And so I want you to do me a quick favor right now. And I want you to understand this. And I need you to totally get this. And I've said this to you before, and I'm going to repeat it again. When you lose, don't lose the lesson. If that's all you get from this message, then I have done my job. When you lose, don't lose the lesson. Do me a quick favor. Go ahead and hit the share button. Hit the share button. If you're getting some value from this message, go ahead and hit the share button, because I know there's somebody you're connected to that needs to hear this message that's going to be able to get some value from it. But when you lose, don't lose the lesson. And so I had to learn very carefully from that event, from that experience. These are some of the lessons that I learned: that failure is an event. It's not who you are. It's not a person. And the other thing that I had to learn is that failure is going to precede success. And so you have no idea that many of the lessons that you've experienced in your past failures are setting you up for your success. They are setting you up for your breakthrough. That is why Dr. Willie Jolly said that a setback is a setup for a comeback. That's the reason why John C. Maxwell said that your breakdown prepares you for your breakthrough. And the reason why is because there's normally lessons that you learn in your setback. There are lessons that you learn in your breakdown. And what happens is, if you can learn those lessons and take those lessons with you, they will position you to have a comeback. They will position you to experience a breakthrough. And so I need you to get that. I totally need you to get that. And so I had to learn for myself that failure is going to precede success. And so listen, I know failure can be painful. I know that you've gone through some losses that you didn't necessarily want to experience, and you're wondering if you are going to succeed. But I want to remind you of something that John C. Maxwell said, and he said that you got to learn to fail your way forward. You know, as a matter of fact, he's got a book called Failing Forward. And I want you right now, go ahead and do me a favor. For those of you who get this principle and understand that you're going to fail, but in those failures, if you can grab the lesson, it is going to set you up for success. If you can get that principle, if you get that, I need you to do me a quick favor. In the comment section, do me a quick favor, put hashtag fail forward, hashtag fail forward, because I need you to get that one thing. I need you to understand that you are going to fail your way forward. You're going to experience some losses, yes, but if you can get the lesson from the loss, you're going to be able to leverage that lesson and apply it to the next opportunity, apply it to your next challenge, apply it to your next experience. And that is going to catapult you so that your outcome from the first time you went through that obstacle, the first time you went through that experience, the first time you went through it is going to be entirely different from the outcome when the second time you face the similar challenges. And that is a sign of growth. Let me tell you something. Here's a sign of somebody who's not growing. Somebody who keeps going through similar type experiences and keeps facing the exact same outcomes. Listen, if you keep doing the exact same thing over and over again and you're expecting a different outcome, we've heard over and over again that that's the definition of insanity, because you can't keep doing the same thing, keep hitting the same wall, keep going from one toxic relationship to another, keep sabotaging your success week after week, month after month, keep putting yourself behind the eight ball, for lack of a better expression, year after year, month after month, and keep scratching your head and say, why does this keep happening to me? At some point, you got to hold the mirror up and say, wait a second, I'm the common denominator. What is the lesson for me to learn? What do I need to learn from this experience so that I can take this lesson with me and apply it to next time I'm dealing with a circumstance? If you can get that, listen carefully, if you can get that, things begin to shift for you. If you can get that, then amazing things begin to happen. And so here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to understand, that the next time you experience a loss, whatever that loss may be, the next time you experience a relationship loss, the next time you experience a financial loss, the next time you experience a loss in the process of pursuing your goals and your dreams, in your business, in every aspect of your life, the next time you experience a loss, instead of you just being a victim, or instead of you looking on and being bitter and angry at whoever did you wrong, or looking at the circumstances and feeling sad for yourself, I want you to take the high road. And part of taking the high road is trying to unpackage the lesson. So I want you to write this down. Here's one of the questions that I want you to consider. When you look at that situation, I want you to say, what can I learn here? What is it that I can learn here? What can I learn here? I am in the middle of a very difficult situation. What can I learn here? I just lost from this investment. What can I learn here? I just went through a divorce. What can I learn here? I just literally messed up a wonderful relationship. What can I learn here? I literally keep having success and then dismantling the success. In other words, I'm self-sabotaging myself, and this has been a repeated pattern in my life. What can I learn here? I keep literally having people come into my life and then go out of my life. I can't seem to maintain healthy relationships. What can I learn here? There's always something that you can learn. If you ask, listen, powerful people ask powerful questions. If you're willing to ask those powerful questions, if you're willing to ask those questions, then guess what happens? Amazing things begin to happen. So I want you to go back and reflect, and you say to yourself, what can I learn here? Now, here's the other thing I want you to do. Oh, you're not going to like this. You're not going to like this, because this is going to take a little bit of ownership. This is going to take a little responsibility here. Here's the next question I want you to consider yourself, and I want you to say this to yourself. What role did I play in this? What role did I play in this? Listen, that's not always easy to ask yourself that question, especially if you feel as if somebody else has done you terribly wrong. I told you when I did that investment, it was with a family friend who sat down with me at the kitchen table, promised me everything that you can imagine, took a check from me, and went on and did something entirely different. Now, it's easy in that situation for me to say that that person betrayed me, they lied to me, they did this, they did that. But there were still some lessons in there for me. There's still some role that I played in it. Listen, I co-signed on a student loan for somebody, and they failed to honor their commitment. And it's easy for me to have just been bitter and angry at them. And trust me, I was bitter and angry at them for quite some time. But guess what? There was still a lesson in there for me, and I still played a role in it. And so there's always going to be a powerful question in there, and that's where you begin to learn the lessons that are in there for you. Listen, the other party in your situation, they got to learn their own lessons. The only thing you have to be responsible for is learning your own lesson. And so the question you need to ask yourself is, what role did I play in this? What role did I play in this? I want you to ask yourself that question. It's a powerful question. And oftentimes you're going to get a very powerful response. And it's often a response that you're going to be able to grow from. And then I want you to think this for a moment, because this is where there begins to be a shift. What could I have done differently? If there is anything I could have done differently, what could I have done differently in that marriage? What could I have done differently in that particular investment? What could I have done differently in that career? What could I have done differently in my business? What is it that you could have done differently? Just ask yourself that question. Listen, powerful people ask powerful questions. You've got to be willing to ask yourself that question. What could I have done differently? And consider that for a moment, because if you consider that for a moment, oftentimes you're going to find the lesson for you. Listen, if you're getting value from this message, do me a quick favor. Go ahead and make sure you hit the share button if you didn't already hit the share button, because I know that there's somebody that's going to get value from this message tonight. And so finally, here's the next question that you need to consider. and this is where the growth takes place, what will I do differently in the future? The next time that I'm blessed enough to get an opportunity to move forward on a business opportunity, what am I going to do differently? The next time I get an opportunity to get into a relationship, what am I going to do differently? The next time I get an opportunity to have success, what am I going to do differently to be able to maintain it and not sabotage it? The next time I get the opportunity to get an amazing job opportunity, a window of opportunity, whatever it might be, the next time you're in that situation, what is it that you can do differently? Listen, if you ask yourself those powerful questions, what can I learn here? What role did I play in this? What could I have done differently? And what will I do differently in the future? You'll be able to unpackage some powerful lessons for yourself. Listen, I start off by sharing this with you. We all are going to experience some losses in life. Unfortunately, nobody is exempt. But when you experience those losses, they don't have to become compounded by you repeating the same things over and over again. And so, in other words, you can go back and look at your losses and try to figure out what the lesson is. And I want to remind you of the proverb that says, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. And so all I want you to do is to start thinking about what are the lessons that you can gain from your past losses. Get those lessons and apply them so that the next highest and best expression of you can show up. So that the next time you have the opportunity, the next time you have the relationship, the next time you're on the journey, you'll be able to do things so much differently. And so one more time before I sign off and before we end this, do me a favor in the comment section, go ahead and put hashtag find the lesson, hashtag find the lesson, because I can guarantee you this. Listen, you may not be able to control the losses, but I guarantee you this, there is always a lesson. So find the lesson, hashtag find the lesson. Hey, listen, I'm super excited. I want to once again just remind you, literally, we're just 2 short months away from one of my most amazing trainings that I put on, which is known as my Master Storyteller Academy. Hey, listen, my Master Storyteller Academy is a 3-day transformational training that is specifically for people who are aspiring coaches, people who are speakers, people who have a service-based business, who are looking to attract more of their ideal customer and their clients, and they understand in order to do so, they need to stop having a one-on-one conversation and learn how to have a one-to-many conversation. They got to learn to talk about their business, their product, and their services in a kind of way so that they attract the customers and the clients that they want, so that they can convert customers and clients and make them move forward. Hey, listen, if you know that you're ready to up your game and you want to be able to share your story and be able to share your message so that you can better market your products and your services, listen, you want to join me at the Master Storyteller Academy. Hey, I've already have at least 80% of the class completely filled up, and I've got about 20% left to be able to fill up the class, and only a couple more seats because I keep these trainings fairly intimate. And so if you know that you have been wanting to work on your story and you know that this is your time to develop your message, to strengthen your story, listen, you want to join me at the Master Storyteller Academy. So just real quickly, all you got to do is head on over to masterstorytelleracademy.com and fill out the super quick application. Someone on my team will connect with you and we'll get you all the details so that you can make a decision as to whether or not you're going to join us for my next Master Storyteller Academy. Listen, I know one thing for sure. If you attend this training, the way that you come into the training, I guarantee you this, that you will significantly improve in your ability to be able to share your story and be able to convey a powerful message that attracts customers and clients and allows you to have the kind of impact that you really want to make. And so if what I'm sharing with you resonates with you, don't waste any time. Go to Master Storyteller Academy, fill out the application, and I'm looking forward to you joining us for our next training. So listen, hopefully you got some great value from tonight's message. When you lose, don't lose the lesson. I want to give a quick shout out to Darren Mahalika, I see you. Thank you so much for joining. Joelle, Roxanne, Talicia, Theon, I see you. Roz, I thank all of you for joining me tonight. Moet, Jackie, Jeffrey, Shwanda, thank you so much for joining me tonight. But listen, do me a favor. If you got value from tonight's message, make sure you share it with a friend. So listen, thank you so much. This is Andy Henriquez. I want to thank you, like always, for joining me on the Thursday night Show Up for Your Life Motivational live stream. You can join me same time, same place next week. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. God bless.